Another young black male who clearly is deeply self-hating has swallowed whole systemic racism, the notion that I am nothing because I'm black, and therefore you're nothing. And he tried to pick a fight with this young brother, and the young brother at the bus stop didn't want to fight him, so my man pulls out his gun and he murders him. And now I'm telling you about Chicago. And I happen to believe that the reason why Chicago became national news is because he was an honors student. But it shouldn't just be because someone is an honors student. Everyone's life is valuable, whether you're an honors student or a special education student. Am I right, John? Everyone's life is valuable. And so if last year was really a movement, we would have put down the gun, we would have put down the knife, we would have put down our hand, we would have put down the planks of wood that was used to beat Darien out of Braden in Chicago. So that says to me, there's something much deeper here. It says to me that while I'm happy for Barack, I'm happy about the image of him and Michelle and his children, as I said. I'm happy about the stimulus packages that have seemed to help some people around the country because the foreclosure situation is out of control. How many of y'all know someone that's been foreclosed on? I certainly do. One of my best friends, single mother, 2 children, was making 6 figures just a year and some change ago, lost everything because of the recession, and was forced to leave New York and move back home across country. Lost everything. Everything. I'm glad that he's president because we're having a conversation, a national conversation about health care. There's something wrong when we live in a country that claims to be about democracy and empowerment and freedom for all. We're out of 300 million people. A third of the population either has no health care or very little health care. Where in many of our hoods, like in Jacktown, Jackson, Mississippi, or Brooklyn, where I'm from, you know what the primary doctor is? The emergency room. You get sick, where do you go? The emergency room. Because that's the only thing you can afford is the emergency room. And sometimes we hope the emergency room don't send us the bill, am I right? And in some cases, we give them wrong name, am I right? Or fake social security number, am I right? Y'all don't want to say that, you know, we're on camera, right? But it's a necessary conversation on health care. I'm happy that there was cash for cars, am I right? You know, let me get rid of this hunger and get some cash. I need some money. I'm happy that they're talking about education on the national level. That No Child Left Behind piece was a sham because it was grossly underfunded. We've left many children behind in this decade alone. Many. In New York City, where I come from, and I don't know how it is here in Jackson or Mississippi, but I can only imagine. In New York City, only 50% of the young people graduate from high school in 4 years. In some neighborhoods, the level of black and male graduation is as low as 32% to 35%. That's insane to me. That's basically a setup for prison and for hustling on the streets. That's what it is. And so I'm happy that Mr. Obama, as the president, when he's talking about some of this stuff. But let's also be honest about what's not happening that we should also be talking about. That's negative, I should say. The troop buildup in Afghanistan. If our president, Mr. Obama, is not careful, Afghanistan will become his Vietnam. And people say, oh, Kevin Powell, you're you don't support the troops. Yeah, I support the troops. How many of my family members have been in the military? If you come from a poor environment, like I do, someone in your family at some point joined the service. You get out the hood or out the country, get some skills, get some college credits, and go see the world. And I got on a plane for the first time in life because they went to the Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force. Am I right, y'all? My cousin was in the Navy. He never came back. He still lives in Japan. He's like, I ain't never coming back. I'm good. So I'm clear that I can support the troops. And this is very important. Dr. King talked about this. Go Google an interview he did where they tried to condemn him for coming out against the Vietnam War on April 4th, 1967. He said, I support the troops. I don't support the war. And I'm a Christian if we do get a health care bill, and I just saw it on my BlackBerry before I came here. Let me see if there's any update. Senator Max Backus from Montana, who's leading the charge for a health care bill on the Senate side, said, I don't know if we're going to pass this health care bill. And so I'm thinking, because I am of the generation that remembers what happened in '94 when the Clintons were in office, and how they knocked down the health care bill, are we actually going to get a health care bill? Here we are, the southern neighbor of Canada, and you know, I've been to Canada, where people have some form of health care. Here in our country, people say, I don't have any good health benefits. Can't go to the doctor. You know, it's kind of like that Chris Rock routine for understanders where he said we just put Robitussin on everything. We'll take some Robitussin. We just said, well, I mean, so that's what we really do. We take some Tussin, right? Or put a Band-Aid on it, right? And just hope it goes away. That's sad. When we talk about the negatives, the ugly divides and hatreds towards Barack, I don't know about y'all, but it bothers me that there are people in this country that have referred to Barack as Hitler, as a socialist, as a communist. But because I'm a student of history the way you all are, we know that Dr. King was called a communist and a socialist. Without even knowing what a communist or a socialist is. No clue. Without even knowing that there are many nations around the world that have had socialist administrations. Many in Europe, for example. And I'm not just talking about Eastern Europe either. I'm sickened by the fact that since Barack got elected, there's been these tea parties that have been going on around the country. Y'all know what I'm talking about? These angry Americans, mostly our white sisters and brothers, you know, who are like, he's against us. And I understand the unique position that Barack Obama is as a black man, or a multicultural man, or a biracial man. As a human being. He's not the president of Black America. He's not the president of Young America. He's not the president of Hip-Hop America. You know? He's the president for everyone, so he can't come out and say, that's racist. He can't do it. He can't do that. But I can say it. I'm watching one of his speeches on TV, and the congressman from my family's home state of South Carolina yells. Remember that? Yells at Barack Obama. And I'm sitting there like, wow. Mr. Bush was given more respect than that. I work around and in politics. There's something called protocol. If you don't agree with someone, you don't blatantly disrespect someone like that. And I mean, for God's sake, Mr. Obama hasn't been in office for a year, and he has inherited a disaster. A disaster. And many of us, unfortunately, have very unrealistic expectations of President Barack Obama. Give you an example. I was in California about 2 months ago. We had a gathering similar to this with a lot of young people, shall we say. And there was a lot of venom in the room towards Barack Obama. And you heard me, I have my criticism of Barack. If I was him, I wouldn't even touch healthcare this time around. I would say, let's deal with the economy only. Because this healthcare thing is going to be ugly. Let me deal with the recession first, and I'll get back to this